"You don't deserve it," Dad said. My family ditched my Christmas party for brothers. Months later, Grandpa gave me $3 million and cut them out of will. 30 relatives said they'd come. No one showed. They went to my brothers. So Grandpa gave me $3 million. Now they want help? I raised the rent. Hello everyone, my name is Asher. I'm 28 years old and the head of sales at a major real estate firm in Austin, Texas. From the outside, you'd think I had it all. A secure six-figure job, a luxurious apartment overlooking the Colorado River, and the youth to enjoy it all. But behind that image of success, I live alone in a 15th floor apartment in East Austin, which I purchased just months ago to escape my dysfunctional family and a slew of selfish cousins. Is it cruel to describe my family as toxic? But once you've heard my entire tale, you'll understand why I had to make that difficult decision. It seemed like the happiest moment of my career at the time. After working relentlessly for the company, I was ultimately promoted to head of sales, a job I had long desired. When I received the official notice from the board, I was overcome with emotion. My new salary had surpassed the six-figure level, bringing with it endless chances for growth. I had demonstrated my worth and ability for the first time. Caught up in the enthusiasm, an idea struck me. I should have a Christmas party at my home to share the joy with my family and relatives. Deep down, I knew my relationship with the family wasn't ideal, but I saw this as an opportunity to demonstrate my progress and accomplishment. After careful consideration, I chose to host the family Christmas celebration that year. I began making calls to invite everyone. The first call went to Aunt Lenora. My voice was eager as I invited her to the party at my house. I went straight to Uncle Vernon and my cousins as soon as Aunt Lenora said she would arrive. Interestingly, I never brought up the promotion. I wanted it to be a surprise, something that would add to the evening's warmth and unity. The answers from everyone surprised me in a positive way. Everyone sounded happy and eager to arrive. Aunt Irene offered to bring her delicious cheesecake. Uncle Milton said he'd be there with his family, including his 3 young children. Even several of my distant relatives, with whom I'd lost touch, confirmed their intention to attend. After my last call, I sat down to count the confirmed visitors. Almost 30 people said they were coming. That amount really exceeded my expectations. At the time, I felt like a child counting down to his birthday. After I completed inviting the relatives, I called my parents and oldest brother Dorian. I spent a long time contemplating whether I should question them. Dorian was their pride and pleasure, the golden child of my family. As I sat there staring over my guest list, I paused at the final 3 names: Dad, Mom, and Dorian. I knew leaving them out would be considered a primary offense. They'd accuse me of disrespecting my family. In the end, I chose to invite them. I called Dad first. When I announced the party, he asked in his typical dry tone, "Why aren't you having it at your parents' house?" So I contacted Mom. Her reaction was not much better. She replied vaguely, "I don't know yet. If I have time, I might stop by." The final call went to Dorian. After hearing the invitation, he inquired skeptically, "You're hosting it at your place? Do you even have enough space and stuff to keep everyone entertained?" Following those phone calls, I felt nervous and apprehensive. Their frigid replies evoked a flood of terrible childhood recollections. Dorian is 2 years older than me. Our parents have shown open bias toward him since we were children. It may be seen in every little facet of daily life. He always got new things, whereas I had to utilize his hand-me-downs, books, school materials, even his old bike, laptop, and later, his clothes. I still recall our birthday parties. Every year Dorian's birthday was a major affair. Our parents would invite all of his friends, order a special cake from a famous bakery, and give him expensive gifts ranging from the latest game consoles to high-end sports equipment. In contrast, my birthdays were simple family dinners with no decorations, no friends, just a store-bought cake and a few tiny gifts. When I asked why my birthdays weren't like Dorian's, Mom constantly answered, "You don't have as many friends as Dorian. Besides, you're not into noisy crowds." The favoritism became even evident at school. I worked hard and consistently obtained straight A's, whereas Dorian only had average grades. Instead of complimenting me, our parents would excuse him saying, "Dorian is too busy with extracurricular activities to study." Every time Dorian brought home a bad report card, they found a way to rationalize it. But when I received a B in chemistry, they asked why I didn't try harder. That unequal treatment was strongly ingrained in me from an early age. Dorian had a way with words. He always knew what to say to make people happy, particularly Mom, Dad, and our relatives. Whenever someone came by, he'd greet them with a wide smile, inquire about their health, compliment the ants on their clothing, or remember everyone's birthday. Everyone fell in love with him because of such small actions. Thanks to all of that adulation, my parents have spent tens of thousands of dollars on Dorian throughout the years. When he expressed a desire to attend an expensive private school, they did not hesitate. When he attempted to attend a summer trip to Europe, they immediately forked over $15,000. But I was the silent one. I enjoyed books and preferred being alone. That simply made my parents compare us more. Why can't you be more like Dorian? Why don't you know how to talk to people like he does? I asked them to pay for a $3,000 summer coding course, but they declined. Why bother with coding? You should focus on your regular schoolwork. Sitting there in silence after those phone conversations, I couldn't help but wonder whether I had made a mistake by inviting them. But then I thought, perhaps this was my time to prove something. To show them that I too could be successful and that I was not the failure they had always perceived me to be. And I hosted the most memorable celebration to demonstrate how far I had come. Even though I had invited everyone else, there was one name on my list that I had yet to call. My grandfather, David. When I saw his name, I determined I wouldn't address him like the rest. The next day, after work, I traveled from Austin to Rollingwood, a small neighborhood not far away. I carried a bottle of excellent Kentucky bourbon, which I knew he enjoyed. It was more than just a present. It was my method of expressing love and gratitude. As soon as I arrived in front of his warm wooden house, I noticed him sitting on the porch. Even at the age of 80, my grandfather was physically and mentally fit. He still cared for himself, and never required assistance from anyone in the family. Grace, our family's longtime housekeeper, was by his side these days. Grace, on the other hand, was not only helpful, she was also his buddy. She did the heavier work, such as cleaning and shopping, and occasionally kept him company on peaceful evenings. When he spotted me, his eyes lit up with the warm smile I had missed. He hugged me fiercely, as if we hadn't seen each other in months, despite the fact that I had only just visited him. A bit later, we sat on the porch, where Dad typically reads the morning paper. When I informed him that I had been promoted to head of sales, his face lit up with delight. He then gently placed his hand on my head and rubbed it, a gesture he had made since I was a child. With an emotional and sincere voice, he stated, "Asher, I'm truly proud of you. I always knew you'd do great things." After that, I invited him to my holiday party. As soon as I told it, he smiled and said he'd be there without hesitation or questions, just pure support. Before I left, he paused by my car window and said, "I'll be there, and I'm bringing a special gift for you." At that point, I felt something warm descend into my chest. Whatever else happened, I knew I had at least one person who truly loved and believed in me. The week I spent planning that Christmas celebration required the most labor and passion I had ever put into a family function. I wanted everything flawless, from the smallest details to the overall atmosphere. First, I placed an order with a high-end restaurant that specializes in traditional Christmas foods. The meal featured golden roasted turkey with crispy skin, aromatic stuffing with rosemary and sausage, smooth mashed potatoes with butter and cream, and a fresh Caesar salad with shaved parmesan and crunchy croutons. For dessert, I served a classic pumpkin pie and a towering multi-layered chocolate cake topped in glossy dark ganache, but I did not stop there. I hired a professional decorating team to turn my house into a beautiful Christmas wonderland. They draped warm-colored LED lights throughout the living area to create a nice romantic atmosphere. The highlight was an 8-foot Christmas tree in the corner, adorned with sparkling silver and gold decorations and exquisite red velvet ribbons. Twinkling string lights curled around the window frames, casting a lovely, star-like radiance. In addition, I put aside a separate budget to purchase Xbox games, completely outfitted Barbie sets, intricate and fun Lego kits, and a few cuddly teddy bears for the family's children. When I tallied everything up, the total approached $3,000, which caused me to halt for a while. However, I saw it as a worthwhile investment in creating a lovely experience with my family. I wanted them to know that I had matured, that I was financially sufficient, and that I had learned how to care for those I loved. The night before the party, I stood in the living room, taking in all I had prepared. At the time, my heart hoped that this would be a memorable Christmas party. I had no notion that the real storm was coming the next day. On the day of the Christmas party, I double-checked every aspect, from how the food was organized, to changing the lighting, to ensure that everything felt exactly right. Everything was perfect and prepared for the guests. The party was scheduled to commence at 5 p.m. By 4:30, I had completed the finishing touches and was waiting there. No one had arrived at the scheduled time of 5 o'clock, which I had discussed with everyone. The food was presented attractively. The house was filled with Christmas warmth, but it was completely silent. A sense of worry began to creep into my head, but I attempted to remain composed. I grabbed my phone and made a couple calls to check in. The first call went to Aunt Lenora. She answered after 3 rings and said in a panic, I'm on my way, just stuck in traffic. She then hung up. I then reached Uncle Vernon. He quickly apologized and added, Asher, I'll be there in about 15 minutes. I just finished some work. My last call was to my mother. When I inquired why no one had arrived yet, she casually said, We're on our way. It's still early. Don't worry. They all said they were coming. So I breathed a small sigh of relief and decided to wait a little longer. By 5:30, not a single person had arrived. That's when I began to experience actual anxiety. I called back one by one. But this time, something weird occurred. Nobody picked up. That mounting sense of worry became a frigid wave within me. Something was not right. A few moments later, my phone rang, shocking me. I looked down and noticed my grandfather's name on the screen. I picked it up immediately away. Before I could say much, he inquired in a puzzled tone. Asher, the party has already begun. Why aren't you here? The question struck me like lightning. I froze, absolutely perplexed. I promptly responded, What do you mean, Grandpa? I'm still at home, waiting for everyone. After a brief pause, he said again, this time seeming shocked. Didn't you ask your mom to notify everyone that the party would be held at Dorian's place? Hearing that, I shot back, astonished and completely taken aback. Are you serious? I never said that. I never asked her to do that. There was a delay on the other end before he said, I see. Now everything makes sense. After he hung up, the entire picture began to form in my mind, and a torrent of rage and sadness rose within me. My phone suddenly buzzed with a notice as I was attempting to digest what had just happened during the discussion with my grandfather. I scrolled down and noticed Dorian's name in my Instagram alerts. With shaky hands, I opened the app and saw the photo he had just uploaded of a lavish Christmas party at his home. I could see everyone I had invited in the image. Aunt Lenora was laughing heartily, Uncle Vernon held a glass of wine, and all of my cousins and their children were present. Everyone seemed pleased and enthusiastic, as if they were precisely where they wanted to be. A horrible feeling of betrayal poured over me at that instant, annihilating all hope I had. These folks, with whom I had spent the whole week planning to buy gifts, order food and hire decorators, had coldly and purposefully excluded me. Still reeling from what I had witnessed, I called my mother, my rage pouring inside. When she responded, I stated plainly and firmly, Why did you lie to Grandpa and tell him I moved the party to Dorian's house? She responded in a cool, almost chilly tone. What are you talking about? I never told him anything. I could feel the denial cutting deep, but I persevered. Fine. Then why was the party at Dorian's place and no one thought to tell me? That's when she uttered something that felt like a knife in the chest. You should ask Dorian that. Maybe ask yourself what you did so he would not invite you. With that, she hung up. Stunned and enraged, I immediately called Uncle Vernon, wanting to hear the truth. When he picked up, I asked, Why did you lie to me? He acted dumb. Lie to you about what? I did not hold back. You're at Dorian's party, so why did you tell me you were on your way to my place? There was a pause. With a frightened stammer, he stammered. Huh, how do you know? I remained mute. I didn't know what to say to such a pitiful confession. After a few seconds, as if he was attempting to defend his betrayal, he added something that hit harder than I had anticipated. Look, you must understand. Dorian's party was more important. He's working on a big investment deal. It's set to bring in 200% returns. Those statements aggravated an already painful situation. Before I could react, he kept continuing, his tone turning to sanctimonious. If you want the family to respect and prioritize you, you need to be more like Dorian. Think about what's good for the family. Then he hung up, leaving me in deafening quiet. Hearing such statements directly from Uncle Vernon's mouth, I finally realized the unpleasant reality about my family. For them, the only thing that counted was what you could offer. If you brought them money, you were praised. If not, you were disposable, unworthy of their attention or regard. While I was still enraged and heartbroken after those brutal phone calls, I heard the sound of an automobile engine outside. I peeked out the window and saw a cab drive up in front of my house. A recognizable figure emerged a moment later. It was my grandfather. I hurried to the door. He stood there, carrying a neatly wrapped gift box. His eyes were as warm as usual, but I could sense anxiety and pity behind them. When I saw him, all of my feelings that had been suppressed during the night rushed to the surface. I hastily invited him in, my voice shaking and nearly bursting into tears. For the first time that day, I felt like someone genuinely cared. When he walked in and saw the nicely furnished, light-filled room that was empty of people, I felt an enormous sense of humiliation. He said nothing. He simply placed a kind hand on my shoulder, providing wordless reassurance. After he had settled into the living room sofa, I told him everything. The full story. How my parents and family had purposely excluded me. How they lied to me. How they gathered at Dorian's residence without my knowledge. I informed him about the phony phone calls, the Instagram post, and the hurtful remarks my mother and Uncle Vernon had made. He did not interrupt once. He listened quietly and attentively, his tired eyes looking at me with great knowledge, nodding sometimes as if he already knew. When I finished, he sat quietly for a time. Then he put his hand on my shoulder and said, in a gentle, heavy voice, "Son, I've lived long enough to see the true nature of people. What matters is that you learned this lesson." Hearing those words, the storm within me began to quiet strangely and abruptly. Something about his voice, steady and honest, full of life's hard-earned wisdom, was like medication for a broken heart. In that moment, I recognized that my rage wasn't solely about being misled. It was about the profound disappointment of learning the truth about people I had trusted for many years. As we sat in silence, I felt as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. My grandfather did not criticize me or try to console me with empty words. He accepted the harsh truth that I had been forced to discover, and for the first time that day, I felt completely at ease. My grandfather and I returned to the dining area a little later, admiring the untouched food still in its boxes. A startling thought occurred to me. Instead, than wasting everything, why not donate it to those in need? I quickly phoned Thomas, a college acquaintance who now works for a homeless outreach center in downtown Austin. As soon as I described the scenario, he agreed without hesitation to come get the meal. Thomas arrived with 4 other helpers. They helped load all of the food and children's gifts into the center's vehicle, but I didn't want to hand them off. I decided to go with them and hand out the gifts myself. My grandfather insisted on participating, claiming it was the ideal way to conclude a day like this. We headed to the area beneath the I-35 bridge, where many homeless people had established temporary shelters. Seeing the sight of gratitude in their eyes as they received hot meals and gifts caused something inside me to calm. This was exactly what Christmas was all about. Sharing in love, not the phony displays my family put on. One old man called Vernon shared my uncle's name, but he held my hand strongly and exclaimed, "Son, thank you. This is the best Christmas I've had in years." It was already late at night when we returned home. We were both fatigued, but our emotions were calmer than they had been before. Just as my grandfather was about to leave, he handed me the present box he had brought earlier in the evening. He smiled gently, knowingly, and said, "Go ahead, open it." Curious, I lifted the lid. The inside contained a check. I had to look at it several times to be sure I wasn't dreaming things. It was made out to Asher Miller. The amount is $500,000. Surprised, I turned to him and questioned, "Grandpa, why are you giving me this much money?" He put his hand on my shoulder and talked with warmth and gravitas. "I never wanted to say it out loud, but I've seen everything you've gone through since you were little, the way they treated you, and more importantly, you deserve this more than anyone else in this family." He glanced at me with a serious expression just before getting into the taxi and said, "Be at my house. I've got something significant to announce to the whole family." I nodded, vowing to be there and wondering what else my grandfather had planned. After seeing my grandfather leave, I sat alone on the living room sofa, still bathed in the warm glow of Christmas lights. The $500,000 check was in my hands, and I peered at the figures as if they could explain why he had given me something so important. In the silence, my mind turned to all of my memories with him. He stood with me when the rest of the world seemed to turn away. I recall vividly when I was a child, and my parents chose to send Dorian on a summer trip to Hawaii, leaving me behind on the grounds that Dorian deserved it more, because he was better. While Dorian proudly displayed images from Waikiki Beach, Grandpa secretly brought me to Disneyland and spent a whole week ensuring that my recollections were as memorable, if not more so, as those of my brother, or when I discovered my passion of coding. When I asked my parents whether I could take a programming course, they immediately said no. That next week, Grandpa showed up at my home with a new laptop and paid for the entire course. I will never forget what he said to me: "Don't let anyone stand in the way of your dreams." The weekend visits to his place were always memorable. We'd sit on the porch and he'd teach me the deeper truths of life, like how to understand people and stand up for what I believe in. He always pushed me to keep going. His words are still echoing in my ears. "Asher, I believe you're meant to do great things. Don't let anyone make you step back." Now, sitting there in the lovely golden light, my heart is full with appreciation. My family may have deceived me in the cruelest way possible, but he was the only person who saw, believed in, and loved me completely. And in that instant, I realized I wasn't alone in this world. Following the Christmas dinner, my family maintained an unsettling silence for several days. None of them contacted out. No telephone calls, no texts, no apologies. It was as if nothing had happened, as if their treachery and humiliation of me were merely an inconvenience. I drove to my grandfather's place that morning and arrived exactly as he requested. To my amazement, numerous automobiles were already parked in front. Grandpa had called a family gathering, as I had suspected. When I walked inside, the entire family had already gathered. Dorian sat on the sofa, an annoyed expression on his face. My parents sat close together, clearly apprehensive. Aunts, uncles, and cousins were all present, looking around in confusion, unsure what would happen. Someone else was in the room, a man in his mid-50s dressed in a crisp black suit and standing next to Grandpa, a large briefcase at his feet. He seemed serious and professional. When I stepped in, Grandpa said, "This is James, my attorney. Today I have something important to share with the family." Attorney James nodded respectfully, opened his case and took out a hefty folder. In the corner of the room, I observed a video camera set up and recording. After everyone had taken their seats, Grandpa stood and gazed around the room with a stern expression that I had never seen before. Then, in a calm, authoritative voice, he stated, "Today, I've gathered everyone to discuss the distribution of my estate." The room plunged into uncomfortable quiet. A few seconds later he went on. "Starting today, the 200-acre farm will be transferred to Asher. My 15,000 shares at Heritage First National Bank will also go to Asher. The main house and the rest of my assets will be passed on to Asher after I'm gone." As soon as he finished, Attorney James took notes and meticulously documented everything, while the camera captured every word. My grandfather's estate totaled approximately $3 million, which included the farm, this property, stock investments, and liquid assets. The minute the announcement hit home, the room exploded. Uncle Vernon, my father's younger brother, rose up and snapped, "This isn't fair, Dad." Aunt Celeste, my father's sister, jumped up angrily. "How can you be so biased? We're your children too." Her son Jasper said sadly, "Grandpa, this is messed up." Dorian jumped up from the couch, his face flushed with rage. "This can't be real. I'm your grandson too." Even my father couldn't hold back. He screamed, "This is ridiculous. Why does Asher get everything and the rest of us get nothing?" My mother looked at me with anger in her eyes and exclaimed, "Asher has done nothing for this family. Why would you give it all to him?" Among the uproar, Grandpa quietly lifted his hand, signaling everyone to remain silent. Then he remarked, his voice firm and determined, "Originally, I planned to divide everything equally among the three families, but after seeing how all of you praised Dorian and turned your backs on Asher, I changed my mind." My father exploded again. "It was just a party. That's not a good enough reason." Aunt Celeste, Uncle Vernon, and a few cousins concurred, calling the judgment unfair. Grandpa gave a sour smile and added, "Didn't Dorian promise you all a 200% return on some big investment? You'll all be rich soon. Asher has none of that." At that time, Dorian's rage turned to desperation. "Grandpa, please cancel the will. Please give me the money. I'll invest it and triple your return." Grandpa laughed loudly and stated forcefully, "I'm not stupid, kid." Then he turned to Attorney James and stated, "Everything has been clarified. I have nothing further to say." James agreed and verified that everything, including the will, transfers, and legal papers, would be completed within 1 week. The entire family stood up and stormed out in a rage. Nobody accepted Grandpa's decision. Before leaving, my parents, Aunt Celeste and Uncle Vernon, issued one final threat. "If that's how you want to treat us, then don't expect any of us to be around when you need help." Without hesitation, his grandfather said, "I still have $1 million in personal funds. That's more than enough to pay for private care and medical services. I won't need anything from any of you." And then they all left in terrible silence, leaving only Grandpa and me in a lonely house. The home fell silent as the door closed and the last car engine faded into the distance. Grandpa and I sat across from one another in the living room. I sat quietly, trying to understand what had just transpired. I now own a $3 million estate, a 200-acre farm, and bank shares. It was a life-changing moment I could never have predicted. I finally broke the silence. Grandpa, I don't know what to say. Thank you. Thank you so much. Then I posed the question that had been on my thoughts all morning. Can I ask you something? What was the real reason you decided to leave everything to me? I know it wasn't just because of the Christmas party. He gave me a gentle grin, his eyes warm and filled with care. He didn't jump into a lengthy explanation, listing the years of events he'd witnessed or the numerous instances I assumed had gone undetected. He said, "Because you deserve it." That little response encapsulated everything, all the love, trust and pride he'd shown me over the years. My life swiftly fell apart in the days after the reading of the will, as my family arrived one by one, each with a desperate plea. Aunt Celeste was the first to emerge on my doorstep. When I opened the door, she stood there with red, watery eyes and said pleadingly, "Asher, I need your help. I need $25,000 for my husband's heart surgery. It's urgent. He needs it to survive." Uncle Vernon stopped by next. Sitting in my living room, he gave me a serious look and said, "Asher, I'm hoping you can help with $10,000 for Caleb's next college semester." Then came the cousins, one by one. Someone needed money to repair a leaking roof. Another reported their automobile had broken down, and they needed assistance purchasing a new one. Each story seems to address a true and immediate need. But the most unexpected thing was not their sudden interest in me. My parents' attitude had completely shifted. My mother started contacting me every day, asking how I was doing, checking on my health, and speaking to me in a kind, gentle tone that I had never heard from her before. My father kept inviting me over for dinner, saying things like, "We're still family, we need to reconnect, put all these misunderstandings behind us." But beneath every word, I could sense the true motive. A slow, careful attempt to persuade me to share the inheritance, or, better yet, return it entirely. I held firm on each request. I declined calmly, clearly, and without hesitation. Because after all, I had finally learned to say no to those who had harmed me. I couldn't take the frequent interference from my relatives anymore, so I made a solid decision. I sold my house and relocated to a location where no one could find me. I sold my previous home for $380,000. With that money, along with what Grandpa had given me, I could buy a high-end condo worth $710,000 in East Austin, one of the city's most safe regions. My new place is on the 15th floor, with 2 huge bedrooms and a stunning view of the Colorado River. Most importantly, the facility is equipped with cutting-edge security features such as key card entry, on-site guards, and surveillance cameras that cover every area. Nobody gets in without my consent. To completely break ties, I changed my phone number, updated my email address, and removed all of my social media profiles. I didn't want any threads tying me to the chaos I'd left behind. When I got the keys, I invited Grandpa to see the place. He spent over an hour strolling through the rooms, admiring the open living space and stepping onto the balcony to enjoy the view. As we stood there, watching the city in the lovely afternoon light, he put his hand on my shoulder and remarked proudly, "You did well. I'm glad you took the step to walk away from them." Hearing those comments, I knew I'd made the proper decision. And for the first time, I felt like I had a truly personal space. A home where I could live in peace, free of the people I used to call family. After I changed my living condition and shut off all communication, the harassment from my relatives ended. Life got quiet. I could concentrate solely on work while enjoying the private area I had created for myself. But the tranquility was destroyed. It was a typical afternoon at the office when the receptionist called and informed me that a group of individuals was waiting for me in the lobby. When I went downstairs, I noticed Aunt Celeste, Uncle Vernon, and their son and daughter waiting there, apparently anxious and upset. I didn't want to raise a commotion at work, so we planned to meet in the Starbucks next to the building. Aunt Celeste erupted in rage and desperation as soon as we sat down. Dorian had persuaded them to invest in Family Coin, a new cryptocurrency that offered large profits of up to 300%. Dorian had pitched himself as the project's official advisor, using the family name and exaggerated accounts of previous success, many of which had been embellished by our parents to garner their faith. His influence was so great that 4 branches of the extended family, including Aunt Celeste and Uncle Vernon, contributed a total of $1.6 million. Uncle Vernon explained that the Family Coin website has disappeared. Dorian stopped answering phone calls, removed all of his social media accounts, and even moved out of the apartment where they knew he lived. What surprised me the most was not the swindle, but their demand. Instead of contacting Dorian or going to the police, they came to me and demanded that I reimburse the money on his behalf, using the argument, "You're Dorian's brother, that makes you responsible for what he did." Hearing it, I was caught between outrage and disbelief at the foolishness. I stood up, paid for my coffee, and addressed them with a cold, calm voice. "Let me clarify. If you come to me again about this, I'll take you to court. I have nothing to do with what Dorian did." They immediately altered strategies. Uncle Vernon chimed in. "Didn't Grandpa give you over $3 million? You should be splitting that up." Aunt Celeste jumped in. "Please, Asher, we're about to lose our house to the bank." They kept pushing, attempting to guilt me, beg, and argue, but nothing worked. I spun around and walked directly out of Starbucks, not looking back. At that point, I realized cutting ties with the family was the appropriate decision. 2 days after our coffee shop meeting, my phone rang with an unexpected number. When I responded, I recognized the voice I had been trying to avoid for months. "Asher, it's your mother," she explained. Her voice seemed more fatigued and agitated than normal. She got right to the issue without greeting everybody or making small conversation. "I need you to help with $300,000 to cover the mortgage. The bank is about to seize the house." When I pressed for details, she grudgingly revealed the awful reality. She and my father had taken out a $300,000 mortgage on their home and given Dorian the entire amount to invest in the family coin business. They were on the edge of losing their home, with no way to repay it. After hearing everything, I let out a chilly laugh and answered, "I'll make you an offer. I'm willing to buy the house for $500,000. If you agree, sell it to me. But I'm not going to give you 300 grand to bail you out." My mother said, "You ungrateful brat. I gave birth to you." I remained calm and said, "That's true, but that doesn't mean I'm responsible for cleaning up your mistakes." I drove to Grandpa's place to inform him of the nighttime call. He listened without surprise and then said something that clarified everything for me. The rest of the family had also approached him, attempting to persuade him to change the will and get them out of their financial predicament. But Grandpa had held his ground. He assured them that he would not modify a word. When they refused to go, he calmly called the police and had them removed. The phone rang again. The same number that my parents had used. My father's voice was more controlled this time, as if he had weighed my suggestion. When I picked up, he talked in a calm, practiced tone. "Asher, your mother and I agree to sell the house to you for $500,000, just like you said." But almost immediately, he added a condition. "However, we want to keep living in the house. We've been here for years. We can't just leave." I couldn't help but be amused by how calculated everything was. They wanted the money to pay off the bank while also keeping the house, making the agreement fully beneficial to them. After a brief delay, I spoke gently. "My current offer is $450,000. You want to stay? Fine. $3,000 a month in rent." That number hit a nerve. My father lost his rage and exclaimed, "You said 500 last week, why are you changing it now?" I let out a tiny giggle and said with quiet assurance, "This is business, Dad. You missed your chance last week, and let me be clear, if you call me a third time about this, the offer drops to $400 flat." He hung up right away, most likely because he was angry. I sat back, knowing that the next call would arrive. 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time, his voice was different, quieter, and less confident. In a plaintive tone, he continued, "Asher, your mother and I want to renegotiate for $170,000. Would you take it?" Then he added, "We'll move out once the paperwork is done. We can't afford $3 grand in rent." That offer explained everything I needed to know. I was receiving the house for a reasonable price, and I wouldn't have to deal with them living there or causing problems. Without hesitation, I responded, "Deal. I accept." And just like that, after years of mistreatment, I learned how to stand my ground, negotiate, and defend what was mine. The process of transferring the house from my parents to my name is still continuing. My attorney is handling all of the legal paperwork, and it is expected to be completed soon. My folks have already started packing and planning to move into a smaller apartment that they can afford. As for Dorian, he is finally facing the repercussions of his actions after losing all of his money in the family coin scam. Aunt Celeste and Uncle Vernon reported him to the police. He was arrested and is now awaiting trial on financial fraud allegations. Ironically, they also approached me, asking if I would buy their house to assist them get out of their dilemma. Needless to say, I decline. We came up with a significant plan for the 200-acre ranch that my grandfather gave me. We are leasing the land, and with the proceeds, Grandpa and I decided to start a scholarship fund for poor youngsters. It's our way of doing something truly beneficial for the community. Even though my life has drastically altered, I still spend my weekends with Grandpa. Those peaceful afternoons on his porch, sipping coffee and talking about life, have become my favorite part of the week. He's still healthy, sharp, and most importantly, he agrees with every move I've made. Looking back on my voyage, I don't regret any decisions. It was proper to cut ties with my family, relocate, and resist their outrageous demands. For the first time, I feel valued and have complete control over my destiny. If I could give one piece of advice to everyone listening to this narrative, it would be this. Don't allow familial ties blind you to reality. People who truly love you will never intentionally hurt or take advantage of your kindness. Your assets, including time, energy, and money, are the outcome of your hard work. Protect them from those who simply take without giving. Some may believe I was too harsh or selfish in how I treated my family. But what are your thoughts? Was I greedy? I really want to hear your comments. Leave a comment below the story. If you enjoyed this tale, please subscribe, like, and share it. Also, please let me know where you are listening from. I'd want to know how far this story has progressed.